Okay, welcome. Here's still place in the front. Someone? No. Okay, welcome everyone to our Cloud Exchange opening launch in Helsinki. I would say that this is one of our most asked service or upcoming service in the last 6 months. So it's pretty expected. I don't know how many of you are actually our customers or how many are here just to hear what the service is. But in brief, Equinix has a global platform. We have presence in, I think, more than 40 metros, almost 50 metros now. US, Americas, EMEA, Asia. We have almost 200 data centers all over the world, and we call that platform Equinix. Equinix Cloud Exchange is the platform on top of all of our, or almost all of our data centers, laying globally, offering access to all customers, all service providers in any of our data centers. Most of the biggest hyperscalers, most of the biggest cloud providers, they are all, at some level, they are our customers somewhere in the world. You see some snapshot of the customers reachable from our Cloud Exchange, but basically what it means to you. If you have a business here in Finland, and you are expanding, are already present somewhere in the areas we are, this is platform for your services to connect service provider in the country, in Singapore, in US, in Sweden even if you want to, in a local data center, in Equinix data center here in Helsinki. As an example, if you need a connectivity to Microsoft Azure in some other place in US or Amazon, connecting here in our data center in Helsinki, you can get that service locally. If you are a foreign company entering to Finland, that works vice versa. In your home country, in data center, Equinix data center abroad, connect there, you can get local cloud service here. If you are a cloud provider, we welcome you to join to our platform here, so you are able to sell your services to all Equinix customers globally and expand with us globally. If you want to sell services, cloud services, for example, in Singapore, US, you can do it with this platform. I'm not going to go in details in my speech. I mean, Rory later tells you exactly what that means, how it works, and what you should do if you want to connect. So basically, these are the service providers who are now available in Helsinki. Means you can have a direct, secure, and private connection from Helsinki, from Equinix data center, to any of these cloud providers, which is quite a big improvement for what you could have today without the Cloud Exchange. With the Cloud Exchange, you don't need to build any MPLS network, you don't need to build the private connections for UK to Frankfurt to reach out to hyperscalers. All you need to do is locate in our site and simply cross-connect to our platform here. And that's what it's all about. Carla will tell you later, bit later, what are the cloud trends in the Nordics. I mean, everyone knows the hypercloud is growing. but what are the trends behind what we can expect next, and what's the Nordic's position in a cloud environment. After the Clouders presentation, Rory will tell you all about how you can utilize Equinix platform, how you can utilize Cloud Exchange, and what that means to your business. How do you grow your business? How do you expand with us? And we would like you to expand with us. So we have a lot of people here around answering to your questions. If you want to join, please just ask. And later on, we have a panel. Carla, Richard, Rory. That's your chance to ask questions about this service. I will moderate the panel, ask some questions, but I genuinely hope that you will actually use this position, this situation, that you actually ask what you want to know, how this works, what's on your mind. Because I know there's something like half of the crowd has been asking when this is available. Those one who are our customers, they know that this is service. We launched it in Sweden. We have launched it in US, in Europe, and Asia, in many locations. You know, you can ask detailed questions about Rory, but those who do not know what the service is all about, just ask, let us to tell how you can benefit about it. But maybe I'll let Carla. Carla is with EDC Nordics, Director of Research, and very well aware about what's happening in the market today and how it affects. And I think it will affect to you all.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sami. And good day, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here in Helsinki. I was tempted to take a swim before we started, but I could just stop myself because it's actually much colder here than in Copenhagen, where I'm based. So, my name is Carla Arendt. I head up our cloud research for Europe, and I'm going to take you through some trends that we are seeing in the market around digital transformation and the role that cloud plays in digital transformation in the Nordics. But first of all, I would like to share with you our vision on how the IT industry is evolving. And this is actually quite a history diagram, if you want, because you see this kind of blue soup bowl that has a few gray areas at the bottom, and that actually shows you the whole history of IT. So the bottom one is the mainframe age, which lasted for about 25 years, and then it got and then we moved from mainframe as the dominant IT platform to client-server as the dominant IT platform for the next 25 years. And then for the last 10 years, we've been building what we call the third platform of IT and business innovation. And that is where we are right now. So that is where all of us are participating in the IT industry to build out the next platform. And cloud is the fundamental building block of this new platform that we've been creating and co-creating for the last maybe 10 years, roughly. The three other elements that are part of this platform is big data and analytics, which is very important and now evolving into cognitive and artificial intelligence, social business methodologies as a new way to interact with customers, colleagues, employees, partners, and then mobile, of course. And especially here in the Nordics, I think we have all been very early on adopters of mobile technologies, and especially in Finland, of course, with Nokia leading this trend. So this is the third platform of IT. That doesn't mean that mainframe and client-server computing is going away, but it just means that the dominant IT platform is going to be based on cloud services. And what organizations are now building on top of this third platform is what we call innovation accelerators. So we see that once we have established this new IT platform based on cloud, big data, analytics, social business, and mobility, organizations are then thinking, okay, what are my business applications that I can build on top of this, this new infrastructure. And what we see emerging there is that one key element is, of course, security, so next generation security, because if we are not building a secure platform, then customers will not trust it and they will not use our services. So that is, of course, also a very foundational element. But then we see applications around augmented reality, virtual reality. We see it with Google Glasses or other technologies that are being used in retail, in manufacturing, in production, in healthcare, under operation surgeries. So we see virtual and augmented reality applications being built on top of this cloud platform. We also see Internet of Things emerging. That's a very dominant trend, and I will show you some statistics later on that this is actually the most mature of these 6 innovation accelerators that we are seeing. We see it particularly in manufacturing, where we have a lot of Internet of Things applications being developed, but also in other areas of the industry. Then cognitive systems is basically taking big data and analytics one step further and really creating these self-learning systems, starting into artificial intelligence as well. This is still in its infancy, but we see that many organizations really want to drive insight from the data that they collect, for example, from Internet of Things applications. Then we see robotics also as one of these innovation accelerators that are very relevant for organizations, not only in production, where we have used robots for the last 20 or 30 years, but also in retail scenarios, for example, when we talk about software robots, so chatbots, for example, when you interact with your bank or your retailer, then you will interact with software robots. And that is also changing the way that customer service is being provided. And the last innovation accelerator is around 3D printing, and that is actually disrupting supply chains quite significantly, because suddenly we don't need to ship products around the world, but we can actually 3D print them where we need them. So you can go to the shop and you can just say, I want to have this model of a sports shoe, for example, and they can 3D print it in the shop, for example. So we see some of these scenarios also emerging. But of course, 3D printing is also being used in many other areas. It comes originally from manufacturing as well, but it's now being spread to other industries. So these are technologies that fit very well on this third platform. And what you can see across the top is symbolizing that every industry will have their own specific mix of these technologies to make sense for their customers and to create value for their customers. So we will see a different mix of cloud and big data, social, mobile, and innovation accelerators in healthcare, in public sector, in manufacturing, in retail, in finance. Every industry or every organization needs to decide which of these technologies make most sense for us today, and what is our roadmap of integrating more and more of these technologies. So this is the very broad vision on how we see that the industry is developing. And just to show you what the impact is on the IT market, you can see that the gray bar at the bottom, or the gray area at the bottom, that is spending, IT spending on client server and mainframe computing, which is in decline. So this is the second platform. IT it's still there. It's still a big share of IT spending, but it is a declining, or it sees a declining investment. Then you see spending on the third platform, so that would be cloud technologies, big data, social, mobile technologies, is still growing. It's growing in single digits as companies are maturing these platforms. But where the big spending is happening is actually around these innovation accelerators. So these are the new opportunities that are being created through the use of software robots based on cloud platforms, through the use of cognitive systems, artificial intelligence running in the cloud, because that's where we really create the value for customers. Okay, it's back. Great, thank you. So just to show you that these things are really happening, we researched the market. Every year we run a variety of surveys across Europe and the Nordics. And what you can see here is that most of these 4 foundational technologies have already reached the mainstream. So they are over 40–50% adopted in organizations. So cloud is the most mature, together with mobile, and especially in the Nordics. Of course, mobile is very mature technology. Social media is also being used very much for customer interaction, to provide better customer services, but also to create better collaboration between employees. And then big data is actually the least mature at the moment of these technologies, because it's probably the most complex to implement for organizations. And it's complex for organizations to find the right use cases and to show the business value that they're creating. So we see a lot of experimentation happening around big data, but not all organizations have defined the clear use case yet for their big data applications. If we look at innovation accelerators, you can see that Internet of Things applications are clearly the most mature of these, followed by 3D printing and robotics. And the least mature are cognitive systems and virtual reality applications. But these are, this gives you an overview of what organizations in the Nordic market are currently thinking about, or where they are experimenting, where they are running proof of concepts. And Internet of Things is definitely the one that sees the most adoption at the moment. Also, if we ask about what is the business impact going to be of these innovation accelerators, the biggest business impact is going to be expected of Internet of Things applications. The second one is around cognitive systems and artificial intelligence, and that's quite interesting because I just said it's one of the less mature ones. But if you get it right, the return will actually be very significant. So that's why organizations are really trying to find solutions around that that work for them. One that I haven't shown you before is around blockchain. That's also a very interesting one. We see that it's very rapidly gaining adoption in the market in all kinds of sectors. So we see blockchain being developed to track food supply chains, for example, to ensure that the food is not being tampered with and that you actually get the organic tomatoes that you bought and they are not just being relabeled. We also see it actually in cloud services, where organizations can then track very specifically the consumption that they have with their service providers, and they have a clear and immutable chain of record about their usage. So blockchain is coming very quickly, or is becoming very quickly, a very important technology. And because somebody needs to manage all this change that is necessary to implement digital transformation technologies, we see a lot of new roles being created around chief digital officers. I have given you one example from, because I'm based in Denmark, so that's from a Danish company, Maersk, you will know them. Is that they are really trying to implement these technologies in a big way, and to drive coordinated programs around that, to provide better customer service and to really create a digital experience for customers based on these technologies. But then if you want to implement digital transformation in the broadest sense, then there are 4 aspects that you need to balance out. And one of them is, of course, you want to innovate. You want to use new technologies. You want to implement the innovation accelerators. And you want to be very flexible and provide better customer service. So that's usually the key goal for digital transformation initiatives. But then, of course, it has to be balanced with cost. And we still have legacy technologies and infrastructures in the organization. They need to be modernized. So how do you balance the need for innovation with the need to keep your business running, basically? And then the last one is around manageability and governance, because not only do we have a lot new technologies coming to the market, we also find that the regulatory environment is changing quite rapidly. And thinking of the General Data Protection Regulation, for example, coming into play in May next year. So there are a lot of requirements around governance and regulatory compliance and manageability for infrastructure. So what organizations need to do if they want to be successful in digital transformation is not only to keep an eye out on all the new innovative technologies, but also to modernize their infrastructure. Because otherwise they cannot provide the flexibility that the business demands. And when they start on this journey to modernize infrastructure, then usually they hit one of these three barriers. One is around talent. We don't have enough people with the new qualifications that we need. For example, cloud architects, but also people who can implement innovation accelerator technologies at the moment. So that is the biggest challenge that organizations have at the moment. Also, the second biggest one is around legacy systems. So they look in their data center, they see we have built this IT landscape over the last 20, 30 years. We have a very heterogeneous environment. How do we modernize that? How do we consolidate that? And how can we provide the flexibility and cloud-like environment that we need to provide to the business today? So that is the other big challenge. And the last one is around culture. How do we drive cultural change in our organization so that our employees become more risk-taking, more innovative? How do we free up their time so that they can experiment with these new technologies? That is the third barrier to change. And in order to get across these barriers, actually many organizations turn to the cloud because they find that if they operate in a cloud-like way, or if they architect their IT infrastructure like a cloud, then they can overcome a lot of these challenges, especially because they can provide the flexibility of access to IT resources that the business requires. And this is our cloud taxonomy. So what it shows you is we split the market into private cloud and public cloud. In private cloud, we differentiate between enterprise private cloud, so that is your private cloud in your own data center, and the dedicated hosted private cloud, which would be your own private cloud, but at a hosting provider or some third-party provider. So these are the two types of private cloud. And then in the public cloud, we again have two flavors of public cloud that we are looking at when we look at the market. So one is the on-demand hosted private cloud service, which is your instance in the public cloud. So it's a dedicated instance for you, but it's running in the public cloud. Or it's the public cloud service that you would usually think about when you think about public cloud. So it's a totally shared environment with everyone. So these are the four flavors of cloud that we talk about. And basically, only in the first one, you own the infrastructure. In all the three other scenarios, somebody else owns the infrastructure and operates it for you. But the difference is really what you see across this gray bar at the bottom is the level of control that you have over infrastructure. It's the level of security that these different cloud types provide. And it's also about where do you want your data to reside. Basically, that's a decision you have to make for each workload. If we look at the cloud market in the Nordics, then we can see that it's a large and very fast-growing market. So the Nordic market is growing slightly faster than the European average. The Finnish market is about 500 million in 2016, and it's going to grow to more than 1 billion in 2021. So it's a very fast accelerating market. So the Finnish market will more than double in the next 5 years, growing at an average of 21% per year. If we look at hosted private cloud services, we see that at the moment it's a small part of the hosting industry, but it's going to grow to actually over 50% in Finland. So for the Nordics, it's 47% are going to be private cloud hosting services in 2020, but for Finland, it's actually going to be 52% is going to be hosted private cloud services in Finland. So there's a huge demand for hosted private cloud services and public cloud services in Europe, in the Nordics, and also in Finland. If we look at where the Nordics are in comparison to the bigger Western European landscape, you see that they are actually in very much on the average. The German-speaking region is catching up at the moment quite significantly. They've been very conservative to start with, but right now they are really investing a lot into cloud services, and you can see that in this chart. So they are really catching up there. The Nordics have been steadily moving to the cloud and will continue on this steady path to the cloud in our forecast period. If we look at who are the infrastructure as a service providers in the Nordics, you can see that many familiar faces. So you see the hyperscalers on this chart. One of the more local players is Cygate that we are tracking, but otherwise you see AWS, Microsoft, IBM, and Google being the leaders in the infrastructure as a service space in the Nordics. And we see a lot of investment into data centers in the Nordics and also into Finland. So Google is making a huge investment into this data center. They have been building it over quite a few years now, and they keep adding capacity because they find that the Nordics are a very good location because of they have power, cooling is freely available, and it's a good interconnect for them. If we look at cloud adoption of enterprises, then we find that the private cloud option is still the most popular for enterprises in the Nordics. Hosted private cloud is currently about 25% of organizations using it. 41% are using private cloud on-prem. But as I showed you earlier, we expect that this is actually going to move from on-prem to hosted very quickly. Because once organizations have built these private clouds on-prem, they have consolidated their infrastructure, and then it's much easier for them to move to hosted services later on. If we look at the public cloud part, you can see that software as a service is the most popular part of public cloud. And if we look at the market size, then actually it's more than 2/3 of the public cloud market is software as a service. So that would be your customer relationship applications, your human resource applications, that would be your office productivity tools that you use online. That's all counted under software as a service. Then we have seen in the past year that platform as a service is increasingly popular. And infrastructure as a service is a smaller share now of the total public cloud market, because platform as a service has really taken off for organizations. If we look at IT budget distribution, then what we see is that it's actually IT budgets are not moving very fast. It's more incremental steps in terms of the change in budget. So what you see at the bottom here is that IT budget being spent on your own side, on the customer, we called it customer side, but it's basically spent on your own data center. And the majority of that is still traditional in-house IT, but it's a declining part of the budget. So it's going from 45% to 34% in just 2 years. So organizations are expecting to spend less and less on on their traditional IT. What you can also see is that they expect to spend 53% of their IT budget on their own IT, and this is going to decline to just 42% in just 2 years. And this is actually an accelerated movement of IT spending to externally provided IT than we've seen. Because when we asked this question in the past 2 years as well, then it was only a 2 or 3% shift. Now it's an 11% shift that is being expected in just 2 years. So we see an accelerated movement to off-prem IT. Yes?
Are these Nordic figures or European? For Finland, Nordics, or Europe?
This particular one is actually for Europe. But when I check the numbers, they are very similar for the Nordics as well. But it's an aggregated view for Europe, this one specifically. So would you agree with this? Or do you? Maybe. Okay. Okay, good. But when we look at what IT budget is being spent on externally provided IT, then there's still a lot of money being spent on traditional outsourced IT. So that is still a very popular model, and especially in the Nordics, actually, there's a lot of outsourced IT. And that is still going to be there, but there's also going to be more spending on public cloud. But it's very incremental steps that are being expected. When we talk about cloud, we also look at cloud maturity of organizations. And we have created this cloud maturity model where we go from exploration stage to we run everything on the cloud or in a cloud model, and where cloud is really transformational for organizations. And to show you the Nordics numbers compared to Western Europe, we see that the Nordics have a more even distribution across the whole maturity scape at the moment. So we see a lot of organizations in each category, basically, already at the optimized stage as well, whereas Western Europe is a bit more lagging behind. So we have more organizations in Western Europe who are at the early stages of cloud development, whereas in the Nordics we see organizations across the board. But what I found even more interesting is if this is again the today picture for the Nordics, but then if we look at the expectation in 2 years' time, so we can see that Nordic organizations are really planning massive investments into cloud services in the next 2 years, and that they expect they will move across this maturity model quite quickly. So here's another example from Spotify, where they, of course, are being built on the cloud from the start. And they are running in a multi-cloud environment, and that's one of the leading edge organizations who are using cloud as well in the Nordics. But when we look at why organizations are using public cloud services, then the majority is still interested in cutting IT costs. Even though what I find is when I talk to organizations who use the cloud is that if they are mature cloud users, then it's actually not anymore about cutting the cost for them, but it's more about getting this flexibility and agility to create this foundation for innovation and to have access to new functionality, which is much more important than cutting costs. But I mean, this is across the whole sample of the survey, where we also have some immature cloud users. And usually the immature cloud users, they are very much focused on cutting IT costs. But then the second one is, of course, again, to improve better service that the IT can provide to the business. And that is trying to find a solution to this very long conflict that we had between IT departments and the line of business, where line of business wants to innovate and drive change. And IT says, well, we have to run a business. I have to provide a stable platform. I cannot accommodate all the change that you're requiring from me. And about 29% of organizations, they really say, well, we have to move to the cloud to resolve this conflict and to actually live up to the expectations that the business has for us. And then another 20%, they move to the cloud because they want to drive innovation. So they use the cloud for software development, for testing of new applications, to roll out new applications that they can use to interact with their customers. When we look at the flip side of this, so at the concerns, then there's still 49% of organizations who are concerned or who have security concerns when they think about using the public cloud. But again, I think this question very much depends on the maturity of the organization, because mature cloud users are actually not afraid of the security. They find that they actually get better security from the cloud. But if we look at the whole sample of organizations, then security concerns is still number one. Another challenge that organizations find is that they have a hard time integrating their existing IT with the cloud services, and how to manage this movement of workloads between on-premise IT and the cloud. So that's a big challenge. And then skills shortage. So I mentioned early on we have a lack of talent in this space. So that is again coming up in the survey results as well. And one of the areas where I find many organizations are investing right now and experimenting right now is in the area of hybrid cloud. So how do you connect your on-premise IT with the cloud so that you can burst, for example, if you need extra capacity for peak workloads, or you want to keep your data locally in your own data center, but you want to use the compute from the cloud. So there are different models on how you can build a hybrid cloud. And that is really where organizations are struggling right now, but also investing and experimenting a lot. And the biggest challenge in the Nordics for Nordic organizations was to create a unified service catalog about the IT services being provided from their own data center and then from the cloud as well. So that for the user it looks like one IT portfolio, and maybe the user doesn't even know if this service is running in the cloud or in their own data center. So that is really where organizations are investing. The next step onwards from hybrid cloud is then to create multi-cloud architectures. And we define multi-cloud as a way where you would give the user a choice of different public cloud services at each layer. So for example, if you think about infrastructure as a service, you would give the user a choice of different infrastructure as a service providers, and then the user can choose. Or you, as the IT department, you make a choice based on price or regulatory compliance requirements on where these workloads go. But you have not just one provider that you're connecting to from your on-premise IT, but you have multiple cloud providers at each layer. And then the last section of my presentation is then about the external factors that also play a key role when organizations are deciding about where to put their data and if they want to use cloud services. And of course, the big two driving factors at the moment is Brexit and the new GDPR regulation, so the data privacy regulation. And many organizations, they're really thinking about their usage or their strategy for cloud usage because of GDPR particularly. And we ran a big survey around GDPR across Europe, and we asked organizations, will you change your cloud strategy because of GDPR? And 54% said, no, we're going to continue as we did in the past. We're just going to roll out our cloud strategy unaffected. But then that leaves 46% of organizations saying, yes, we will actually reevaluate our cloud strategy. And the actions that they're considering, they range from moving away from global providers to regional providers or even country-based providers, or they are looking to move their data from data centers anywhere in the world to data centers in Europe or in their own country. So these are the different options that they are considering. And I don't want to say that you have to do these things. I'm just saying that that this is what organizations are thinking about at the moment when they think about if they want to continue on their cloud strategy because of GDPR. Because of course you can use cloud services and be compliant with GDPR. You just have to govern the usage in the right way. So to end with my recommendations, if you really want to be successful in digital transformation, I think it's essential that you have a cloud strategy in place and that you drive towards greater and greater maturity of your cloud usage. It's also important to look at hybrid cloud and multi-cloud strategies, because that's where you get the best benefits from cloud, and that's also when you are very mature and you can use different cloud services and you can move your workloads between on-premise and cloud-based IT in the way that you want. That's when you get cost advantages, but also efficiency advantages. And then it's really important to keep an eye out on these external factors which are maybe not the key concern of IT in the past, like GDPR, but which are now coming down, and where the IT department actually plays a key role in enabling organizations to be compliant with GDPR, for example, because you need to understand where your data resides in order to be able to pass the audits. And if your data resides in cloud services, that's okay, but you have to be able to document that and to show your governance mechanisms around that. So it's important that also from an IT point of view, that you help to be compliant, or that you help your organization to be compliant. And with that, I thank you for your attention. I think we will take some questions right now, if there are. Otherwise, we can also take them at the panel. Thank you.
Any questions around the audience except the budget question?
Yes, yeah, that's available to you afterwards. Absolutely. Okay.
Okay, no questions. So then I think we'll let Rory to tell something about Equinix, what we are, what we do, how the cloud exchange links to our strategy, and what is it all about.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, Carla, as well for that. It's really good insight into the way that the cloud is changing in the Nordic area, but also globally as well. So my name is Rory Murphy. I'm a Senior Director of Marketing for Equinix, and delighted to be here today in Finland to talk about Cloud Exchange and how we're launching that, but also a little bit about what Equinix feels about interconnection and why we think that's important, and some tools as well at the end for you guys to look at and evaluate and see if we're going to be helping you in a way that you want. So a lot to come. I guess just for some people here who don't know Equinix or know Telecity, but don't know Equinix. Equinix was founded back in 1998, and it really came about at the time the internet itself was starting to grow. And you know, if you, back in the States, if you wanted to connect to a network, in those days you had to go to the network. You had to go to the network's building, the telco building, and peer there or connect there. And so what Equinix did was found an equal, neutral internet exchange in a building in the States, and then we've replicated that across the globe so that you don't have to go to the telco. You can go to a place called Equinix, and in that place you can connect to a number of telcos in one go. And that's quite significant for us as a company, because it helped us grow beyond just being the place where telcos could connect to each other. And this next slide sort of paints the picture of what really happened and why we feel interconnection is so important in terms of making life for your business and the businesses that you represent a lot easier, because it's not just about networks, it's about clouds, as we'll see. But what we found was that initially the networks came, they connected, that was great, they peered traffic, everyone was happy. But then that brought in other companies, and as the internet grew, e-commerce started to grow alongside that, and those companies also wanted to be located or co-located in the same building so that they could connect to each other. And of course the idea of this, what we call a cross-connect, whereby your rack of servers can connect to another rack of servers in the same building over an internal piece of fibre, started to take sense, because it's cheap, it's very performant, it's scalable and secure. And that was the thing where I think we as a company started to take off in a slightly different way. And it was the launch and the rise of electronic trading, real-time bidding, that really started to make sense. And I guess in truth, it sort of happened around us, and we sort of started to think, well, what's going on here? Why are these financial exchanges deciding to locate their core technology in an Equinix data center? Well, that was good, you know, safe and secure, best-of-breed data centers. That's what Equinix has always done and always will do. But then the buyers and sellers on the other side of that exchange decided to locate within the same buildings. And then we started to find that actually other parts of that industry, of that ecosystem, started to come and locate there as well. And it was for the same reason. It was low latency connectivity, security, the ability to connect very easily to those financial exchanges. And the bottom line, as ever, was that it meant that the players in that market could connect much more quickly than their competitors. So they could, in this instance, make a trade, or rather their algorithm could make a trade more quickly than their competitors. And so we started to grow ecosystems, and we started to get success with different groups of industries coming together. Cloud was the next industry that came along for the same reasons. They wanted to locate in safe, secure data centers, clouds of all different types and sizes, from the global hyperscalers, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Googles, to smaller local companies as well, and offer services. And of course, at the same time, industries were starting to think, well, hang on, the service that we operate, can we virtualize it? Can we make this a cloud service? Can we start bidding and being part of that ecosystem that will allow us to open up new markets and develop new services, because people can rent rather than buy? And I guess now we're into the notion of digital business, which is where I think we all are operating here today, so that you can operate across all of those little ecosystems, or rather big ecosystems in some cases, and be successful in digital. So Equinix as a company has grown significantly. There's a purchase there of the Telecity Group in 2016, which has helped us to scale. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but that's the best purchase, of course, that we've made. But we've made a few others as well along the way. And actually, this slide is slightly out of date, because in our map of the world and where we're represented, you'll see in these little lightly coloured dots down here. Just last week, we formally closed our acquisition of a company called Itconic, or Itconic, and Cloudmast in Spain and Portugal. But it means we're in most of the major markets worldwide, over 180 data centers at the moment. And it's that scale and that global reach that I think that will start to become more and more important for your businesses. And when I talk about Cloud Exchange very shortly, you'll see why that is so significant for you in our markets. The way in which we look at the world, we take a vertical view. I mentioned at the start I'm in vertical marketing. So Equinix divides every company in the world into 5 different buckets of type of company. And it helps us position ourselves to meet the demands of those companies. So cloud, I think, as Carla explained, it will cover, infrastructure, platform as a service, software as a service, etc. The networks we've always had, as we started off as an Equinix, a company, we always had great relationships with the networks and continue to do so, because they're the people that can connect your customers from the last mile to the Equinix data center, or can take you across the globe in the kind of latency requirements that you demand. So we have a fantastic choice of network partners. Content to digital media was one of those areas that grew very quickly, and so we represent companies as diverse as Netflix and ITN and companies like this, RTL. But on the enterprise side is where we see the major growth, and I think that's probably where, I'm guessing most of the companies represented here will be working and offering services as well. So from enterprises and financial services, we're starting to see a lot of traction in big companies. I mean, there's some represented there from GE to Bechtel, to L'Oreal and Ingram Micro, but also to smaller companies as well. Because, as actually Carla was saying from the research that IDC presented, is that everyone is shifting away from having their servers in the basement of the building. Now, you may always want some servers in the basement of your building, but companies are starting to question, why is it we have this great big space in our basement which gets very hot and actually probably not very performant, and we're a bit worried about security. Why don't we co-locate those to a third-party provider, obviously like Equinix, and then take advantage of the services we provide. So delivering a secure, neutral marketplace for our business, for your business, I should say, is really important, and that's what we've been developing, which is why we see digital transforming to all industries and becoming the growth engine of the global economy. Now, there are plenty of examples here that you'll know, from Uber to Airbnb to many more, of companies who have grown up in the digital age and have been successful. But we are seeing, and a bit like IDC, we're seeing those trends really writ large now, becoming much more significant and changing. So, manufacturing, oil-style manufacturing, which had a lot of on-premise compute and storage, is starting to move away. And so we sort of term it the industrial internet, and that's where you're starting to get IoT making a very big impact on the way companies do business, and the way they gather data, and the way in which they need to then use that data, analyze that data, and help make business decisions thereafter. Transportation, I guess I mentioned Uber, the whole ride-share notion of you taking a different way in which you can, whether it's Lyft or Uber, or there's plenty of brands out there that do this, the way in which companies have moved away from having to own a taxi, in the Uber's case, to actually sort of the drivers owning that and you renting the service in a different way. Retail, omni-channel, has been around for a while, but the notion that it's not just the bricks and mortar store, it's not just the website, you need to be on all different platforms, different devices need to access that, and you need to make sure that your customers can get what they want, sometimes picking up from one channel, dropping off in another channel. And the hospitality and the sort of room share is that sort of Airbnb idea, of course, about the way in which we can book and stay in locations around the globe has been revolutionised in the last few years. Now, there are many other companies across this space that are being launched, and many will be successful. Many, like Uber, will have up and down moments, like in London at the moment, they're having a bit of a down moment. But there's no question that companies like this are not here to stay. And the way in which we want to consume those services is really, really significant. I'll leave the stat. I think we've covered that with Carla. But this is why Equinix thinks interconnection is at the heart of this. Now later on, I'm going to talk about the way in which we see interconnection in something we call IOA, which is interconnection-oriented architecture. So we'll come back to that. But I think, again, just picking up on the trends that we heard from IDC, digital technology use, urbanization, the whole notion of security and digital trade have just changed, and we need to adapt to those, which is why we're launching services like Cloud Exchange to help you do that. But from the way we see things and the way we say the trend and the need and the impact is quite significant. So if digital technology use has changed, we're saying, well, we think at least from the data that we analyse, $1.36 trillion in additional economic output in the world's top 10 economies by 2020. So that's a stat from Accenture. So you can see the rate of change. Again, I don't want to sort of go back over the stats that Carla presented, but I guess we're seeing the same sort of growth in all of these areas, which is why we as a company are trying to adapt and change. But one thing we've done, and this is, again, one of the things that I said at the start we'd like to share with you, and we can make copies of this available, and we'd love for you to look at this. But we decided to look at interconnection in a little bit more detail, a little bit more scientific, if you like, because the way we look at interconnection is the private exchange of data. So I guess the classic way for you to connect to a cloud service back in the day, or even now, is, well, you get your credit card out, you go to Microsoft or Amazon and you rent a service, and you connect over the internet. The internet's fine, it's great, you can connect over the internet. But of course the internet has its difficulties in terms of peaks, its security, what have you. So what we've seen, going back to my earlier chart of how companies started to interconnect with us in different ways, the e-commerce companies coming, the media companies coming, the cloud companies coming, so they could do that, was exchange on a private interconnection. So to study this in a little bit more detail, we've earlier this year in the summer released something called the Global Interconnection Index, which is a first, as far as we're aware, method in which we've looked at the private exchange of private exchange of data via interconnection. Because I guess we're all used to the internet being big, and Cisco's study, the VNI study, is a fantastic study which looks at the growth of internet around the globe. What we're doing is looking at the stuff below the surface. And I think from the data that we're about to present on this, is that we see by 2020, our index predicts that interconnection bandwidth will outpace the growth of internet by 2 times and 6 times the volume. So the internet is just the tip of the iceberg. Below the water level, there is a massive amount of data being exchanged within facilities like Equinix. And we're actually saying we're expecting it to grow to 5,000 terabits of installed bandwidth. And the right-hand chart gives you an idea of what you could do with that 5,000 terabits, which is quite a lot if you want to do your 1.9 billion PayPal transactions or 4.5 million Uber driver streams. So for the first time, Equinix has looked at interconnection. We have a study, it's called the Global Interconnection Index. It is certainly available for you to download, and we can provide more information on that later. But again, it's underlying, again, the points that we've already heard about the growth and why, in which is important for you to start thinking about how you run your businesses and deliver your services in a digital way that's going to benefit you and ultimately benefit your customers as well. So, Equinix Cloud Exchange. So we're delighted to be able to announce the launch of Equinix Cloud Exchange here in Finland, here in Helsinki. And for those of you who don't know, Cloud Exchange is a service Equinix has been running now for a couple of years across the globe, and we're gradually making it available in more and more markets. At its most simplest, as the diagram shows, it's enterprises have the opportunity to co-locate their facilities in our data center around the globe, and then they connect to the Cloud Exchange, which is that little thing in the middle. And then that allows them to connect to the cloud. So Equinix Cloud Exchange, again, at its most simplest, is a really good switch so that you can connect into once, and then at the back of that, you have a lot of access to all the other cloud providers who are connected there, and allows you then to be very proficient and efficient in the way in which you can connect to your cloud service providers. There are massive benefits to that. There are massive benefits of being able to do this and to being able to link to a number of companies. Obviously, a consistent approach is important. The idea that you can minimize your latency, security becomes really important because you're now connecting to those clouds within the data center. You're avoiding connecting to them over the internet, and there are different ways in which we can help you there as well. We can do this across layer 2 and layer 3. All sorts of different ways you can connect in terms of the speed. We have 5 nines, so a very highly available platform, and we can take you to lots of different global markets. is a little bit more detail on the technical slide. Now, I appreciate within the audience we'll have different people who will want to ask and be interested in more and more detail on the technical side. Some who won't. So I'll take you through this slide here, but I'm delighted to say we have from our product team, Dorench over here, and we also have Frank and Henrik from our solution architect team who can go into much more deep detail, and obviously we can take questions later on the panel. But again, just breaking out the Equinix Cloud Exchange, this is sort of what we see it working and how it's best working for you. Equinix has a product called Performance Hub, which is a reference architecture for you to deploy within Equinix. You may be able to do this yourself. This is some additional help that we can give you, and it gives you a good way for you to quickly and efficiently deploy your technology deployment within Equinix. Once you have a facility within Equinix, once you have your cabinet or series of cabinets, your racks within Equinix, you use a VLAN to connect to our Cloud Exchange, and then from the Cloud Exchange, we do a VLAN or a private VLAN to any of those other services. So obviously Amazon and Microsoft are referenced there along with Google. But any of those services can be made available to you. And then in terms of how we make that service available, Equinix, as we've always done, we charge for space and power within the data center, your facility. We charge you for the virtual connections, and then obviously you have a relationship direct with the cloud providers. Now, the really important thing on this particular slide, and we'll go to it in more detail, is the ability for you to then connect to these cloud service providers using their own preferred VPN method. So Amazon has Direct Connect, Microsoft ExpressRoute, etc. And this is a really good, secure connection to those cloud services, which means all of a sudden you're bypassing the internet, the public internet, for connecting to your partners, to your customers, to your providers in a way that perhaps you've never done before. And once you start to do that, you're looking at interconnection in a digital way. You're actually using the method in which to connect to those partners much more simply, more efficiently, and hopefully will allow you much more success in your businesses. Now we have a change. So far I've painted a picture of the way in which you would connect to a cloud service provider via Equinix. And this is a significant change, particularly here in Helsinki. So I've just built up this slide. So let me just walk you through this as a stage by stage. So at present, 2017, the way in which you use Cloud Exchange is that you use it within our local data center, so here in Helsinki. You connect to the Cloud Exchange, and then if you wanted to connect to those particular instances of those hyperscalers here, you would use the connectivity via a network service provider. So your network service provider says, well, okay, but I need to connect to, I'll make this up now, Microsoft Azure in London. Okay, so what we would say is that, well, Equinix in ourselves, we're not a network. We don't tend to provide that service. However, within Equinix's data centers, we have thousands of networks. We can help you choose the right network for you to connect to your cloud service provider, Oracle in this case in London. That's fine, and that's always an opportunity for you to do that, and it's important, but it means you have to select your network. Maybe you don't know which one to use. There's a negotiation, there's an agreement to sign, there's some sort of provision of the circuit, there'll be a letter of agreement, and there'll be a cross-connect. There is a time delay, as you're probably all aware, of connecting to networks, could be up to 90 days. But we can help you do that, and we've always helped companies do that, and it's been adequate to do that. But from the launch of Equinix Cloud Exchange in January next year, you can now, it's shocking even for the water, there you go. There's a drum roll almost. But you can now access and connect directly to multiple clouds across metros. And you can do this through Equinix. So Equinix Cloud Exchange has a new product feature, we call it Remote Connections, and it allows you to connect to any clouds that are resident in any European Equinix data center remotely. So from day one in Helsinki, if you're saying, well, listen, my business really needs to connect to Microsoft Azure, Amazon, Oracle, etc. How do I do that? We can offer you a service that allows you to do that securely and using the remote connection capability of the Cloud Exchange. And for those of you here who maybe even operate your own cloud services, if you're located in Helsinki data center with Equinix, you can also make your services available to other customers in our other metros across Europe. So not only is this a fantastic way for you and your business to connect to the clouds that you need to connect to do your business, whether it's for your own people, your own customers, the secure provision of data, you can also make available your service in an opposite way for other customers. And there may be reasons for that. There'll be lots of different ways in which you can sort of monetize that depending on the nature of your business. Obviously, if the companies that you're working with have locations here in Finland and they want to think about the data sovereignty perhaps or the regulation of local companies and businesses, this is a way for you to actually look at that in a different way. But from the get-go, the ability for you to connect to those major clouds straight away without them having to be in Helsinki will be available from the start of January. As I say, we've got plenty of folks in the room here who can talk to you in a little bit more detail. And it's also a way in which we see the Equinix Cloud Exchange evolve. You know, we're aware of the changing needs of businesses and what they have to do and how to be more successful. And I guess Cloud Exchange is more of a service exchange in many ways. And we're going to continue to evolve that. We're going to continue to make that easy for you to order via our portal. We continue to look at the way in which software-defined networking can help you get to where you need to get to. And Equinix is always evolving and we're always improving our services. But this is a significant leap forward, I think, especially for yourselves here in Helsinki. Oh, excuse me. And just to underline that, it just means you can start to, as the slide I think which Sami showed at the start, you can connect to a whole heap of cloud providers. And I think on the last slide we said 29 other clouds in EMEA. And some of those companies you may know, some that you've never heard of, but it gives you more choice. And I guess at the heart of Equinix's services has always been about choice, whether you need a choice of networks to connect to, a choice of clouds to connect to, or a choice of business information companies to connect to, what have you. We absolutely do see the point about multi-cloud and hybrid cloud and the way in which companies are going to use different clouds for different services tactically and strategically. And again, by using the Cloud Exchange, again, you connect once, you can connect many to these companies in a secure way. And that cloud provider availability is now very simple to find. It's across the Equinix.com site, so obviously available via Equinix FI. And there's a little tool on that URL, and we will share all these slides later, so feel free to take pictures, but that URL will be available. You can go to that URL, and you can see in each of the metros, the EMEA metros that are available, and you can see which clouds are in there. And if you have a business reason to connect to any of those clouds, we're going to make it much more easy for you to do that. We've already had some great feedback from customers. Quote there from Coca-Cola is that we can offer them a common platform and a vibrant ecosystem. So just a couple of case studies very quickly, and then I'm going to go on to talk about interconnection and why we see it as important and how we're going to try and offer you some other tools which might be useful to you. But I won't spend too long on these, but we have three case studies, one with Aon, and the reason they used Cloud Exchange and what their challenge was. And they are a fantastic company with lots of different subsidiaries and companies which they need to connect to. But they didn't have the capability to do what they needed to do in terms of their connectivity to their companies, their subsidiaries. So they used our IOA approach, which we'll come on to in a second. They employed a performance hub, but specifically they use Cloud Exchange to access those services. And we talk a little bit about moving those services to the edge, which is why Equinix is so keen to expand across Europe, expand across Spain and Portugal, is that we want to make sure we have facilities in the key areas where you're working with, because we know that the digital edge is where it's most important. If we can get our data, we can get your data out to the digital edge, you can reach your people, your customers, and be much more successful. Another example, CDM Smith, engineering construction company in the States. We did some stats with them. We looked at, well, how can we improve your business and what were and what do they want to do? And the difference of them using Equinix and the Cloud Exchange was that they could reduce their latency by 38% in this case. They lowered the costs by 2.5 times per bandwidth, saving around 25% in the annual total cost of ownership. And the way in which they do that is that because they look at the whole return on investment, the whole total cost of ownership, and they look at the way in which they're interconnecting already to their customers, and how many MPLS Ethernet connections are they making? Can they scale back from that and only use those network capabilities for where they have to? And Content Bridge, who are now part of Oracle, again, another good example of how they use Cloud Exchange to be much more successful. And for them, it was about bringing the digital supply chain closer and making it more available. And obviously, we heard earlier too, is if we can do that for you and your businesses, if we can allow you access by being with Equinix to the other companies within our ecosystem or the ecosystems in which you're working, the choices for you to connect suddenly become a lot more bigger, and your procurement becomes a little bit simpler. Because, for instance, if you're a website and you need to partner up with a content delivery network, we can say to you, well, within this data center, all of these content delivery networks are available: Akamai, Limelight, Level 3, Amazon, etc. And then it makes it easy for you to say, well, actually, I'm in the same data center. I can connect to those via a cross-connect. I don't need to buy a separate network circuit to go 3 hops to get to the content delivery network. So a good example of how Content Bridge used that to go through. So the last bit of section that I wanted to talk about was really just to sort of talk about strategy and maybe give you some ideas and advice on how in which you can start to take the way in which we look at interconnection and develop a strategy to make your businesses much more successful. And this is sort of echoing one of the slides we had earlier in terms of the differences and the changes that we're seeing across those key areas of digital technology use. Urbanization, i.e. more people coming back to the cities, more businesses happening there, more people living in those cities. Security, data sovereignty, of course, massively important, and digital trade. Now, all of those are limited by real things. So digital technology use, the physics, the real-time interactions. There is a point-to-point delay sometimes in getting information from A to B. The proximity of those services is also vitally important. The notion of gravity and integration also underlines the approaches to cybersecurity and digital trade. And this is how we've looked at interconnection. So interconnection-oriented architecture, a bit of a nod to service-oriented architecture. For anyone old like me remembers how you used to look at services and then build your architecture out after that. What we're saying here is actually look at the way you interconnect, first of all. How do you connect to those? So on the left-hand side, a very big example, but sort of back in the day, this is what would happen. You would be in a central, your business would be in a central place, and then you would do a traditional network architecture build out and connect to a variety of partners and customers around the globe. But you're doing it one-to-many. You're doing this many different spoke type approach, and obviously spending quite a lot on networks. What interconnection first architectures do is to recognize that actually you can't have the facility in the center and hope to be successful doing this all the time, because your people, your customers aren't in the center. Back in the day when we all worked in businesses, there was one business, we all worked in the same building. All the software was delivered on a CD-ROM by a guy from the IT department. Everything happened there. But now your people are remote, they're mobile, they're doing their business in various locations. They're using different technology. They're using their smartphones, their laptops, their other devices to connect. They need on-time, real-time, 24/7 access to the services that help them do that, whether it's Salesforce.com or what have you. So you need to have and deploy your technology that's supporting those services to the edge, or further to the edge, where your people and your customers are. And that's what interconnection-oriented architecture does. We have 4 different tenets of this, and we're going to offer you in a moment an opportunity to have a look at this on your own in deep detail, or as much detail as you want. But it's quite simple. Interconnection-oriented architecture takes a view that you need to simplify the network. Going back to that diagram, is that the best network topology for your business? Are you in the middle and you're doing this? Is that really efficient for you? Are you really getting what you need out of that? By doing that, is your security really operating in the way that it ought to? Certainly in this day and age where cybersecurity is mostly important. Can you really defend against denial of service attacks if it comes your way? Can you set up what we call a data fabric, so that would allow you to sort of take that data and look at that in a different way? And then finally, can you integrate your apps via the intersection points? If your services that your companies are offering have a variety of applications, how are you going to make sure that you can deliver those all the time, always on, always up to your customers? So we talk about architecting for the digital edge, and we've launched something at ioakb.com, which is a new website, so ioakb.com. It is a free and open website. We've spent a lot of time looking at how a variety of our customers have deployed with us. By looking at how they deploy with us, we've learnt stuff. And we've created blueprints from that. We've also taken a view of what the industry best practice is. In 4 areas, we've gone into particular instances of detail. So around the network, security, data and application areas. And this little tube map, which you can actually find on the Metro map, you can find on the website, has taken a view that whatever you're going to do and whatever type of business you have, you must be considering some of these points. You must consider how to do some of these points. And then if you were to click on each of these, you will find that we've developed a blueprint, which will, in a neutral way, look at the way in which you might succeed in connecting to digital ecosystems. What are the common problems? What are the common issues that you're going to face? How will you overcome them? And what are the typical benefits? So this is an Equinix website, but it's neutral. Quite frankly, it's thought leadership from us. You know, we want to put it out there to you guys to have a look at, to go into that, to really drill down into these points. We've just developed and relaunched the community aspect of this. So we'd be really delighted if you would go along. All you have to do is register. There's no fee. It's all lightly branded. It's there for you to take on board. Because we really do think interconnection at the heart of what we do gives us the opportunity to service you better. So the Equinix Cloud Exchange launching in January is going to be a fantastic boon here for Helsinki and for Finland. And this resource that you can use will help you delve into that even more. So, to end a little bit, you know, we're all about trying to help you scale your businesses. We have a strategy, we call it interconnection-oriented architecture. We've done some deep research in the Global Interconnection Index. We have a separate resource in the IOA knowledge base, ioakb.com. And these are more and more tools in which we want you to use and evaluate and give us feedback. Most of all, give us feedback, because we can only improve the knowledge base and the way in which we operate our businesses by your feedback. And your feedback, as Sammy said right at the very start, was we want Cloud Exchange, we want it here in Helsinki. And we're delighted to say we're offering you that today. And with that, I will end and hand back to Sammy. Thank you.
Any questions regarding this presentation? No?
Yes.
Was it European specific? Please repeat the question.
Yeah, so I can read. So the question was about Cloud Exchange and how the slides were showing how you can connect to Cloud Exchange across Europe. Can you also connect to other cloud locations across the globe? Yeah. So initially it is about Europe. So we're offering capability to connect within Equinix Cloud Exchange locations in Europe. Quite frankly, that's pretty much everyone. There will be, you know, very local cloud providers, I guess, in Asia Pacific and the Americas who you can't. Obviously, if you really say, no, but there's a particular cloud company I need to talk to in Singapore, we can still help you get there. We can still help you provide connectivity to that through the choice of networks. And there will be also options sometimes, like financial traders will want to use microwave links to connect to certain locations for particular instances. So that doesn't go away. Equinix is still delighted to say our raft of network service providers can help you get from anywhere to anywhere in the globe. But the Equinix Cloud Exchange launch here in Helsinki will allow you to connect to any other European location. And as we said, about 29 and rising cloud service providers across the globe.
And of course, we have several entities who are connected here in Europe and as well as in Asia to the Cloud Exchange. So we can use them to leverage over the Cloud Exchange this connection as well.
Yeah.
It's more or less in the somehow manual configuration, but of course they are connected to the Cloud Exchange in each region. And
Yeah.
they're using our platform as well.
That's right. So again, we're just sort of reiterating it. It's the ability for Equinix to offer you a choice in the way in which you want to connect to whoever you want to connect to, wherever they are. But because we have the global scale, we have the experience, we can give you really good advice, and our solution architects can take you through any particular instance in deep detail if you.
Any other questions? Okay. First small housekeeping note. I was told to tell that coffee and tea will be served outside, but then we have to go out there. Right? Ulrika, was that right? Kind of that way.
Yeah, so after the panel, I will make sure that we all find a way. We will down the stairs in that room. In there. So it's inside, but it's, yeah. We will have some coffee and tea and maybe come back after the panel.
But first.
I'm the only one standing. Okay. Prepared 5 questions to panelists. First one is really easy. Ready? Okay. Those who haven't yet presented yourself, tell who you are, what you do, so basically why you are here, and what's the best or what's the highlight for this year for you and your company. So.
Sure. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name's Richard Warner. I'm the partner networking lead for Microsoft. So my job really is to work with partners like Equinix and help our customers connect to the cloud in the most performant manner. I would say what's been the most exciting or great thing this year, I think it's just further examples of how cloud, well, Microsoft obviously, but cloud in general is helping democratize IT. So it's giving organizations that never had the ability to use all these great technologies and compute because they couldn't afford them themselves to now be able to access those services and develop some really interesting and amazing businesses, or changing different ways we actually deal with charities and things like that. So I think, seeing that every day that way, that any customer or any company can now use all of the powerful tools that the cloud has to offer in an affordable way is always really exciting.
Okay. Carla?
Yeah, so you've met me before. I head up our cloud research for Europe, and what has been exciting for me to see this year is to see how organizations are embracing the cloud and how they are maturing on their cloud journey and taking it one step further now to look at hybrid cloud architectures and also multi-cloud architectures. And we have launched a new research stream around multi-cloud and what organizations need to do to be successful around multi-cloud. And that's what I find very exciting.
Rory?
Yeah, I guess for Equinix, the launch and the publication of the Interconnection Index, the Global Interconnection Index, was quite a feat. It'd been some time in the planning, as some of my colleagues will know, but the ability for us to sort of strike out and just put it out there to say, look, we've got this view on how interconnections sort of changing, and we started to count it and measure it and come up with some ideas. So that was quite a first for Equinix. And by the way, that will be a yearly publication, so we do want to keep that going year on year. And when you look at it, you'll see that there's more data on Europe, not so much about Finland and the Nordics, but gradually we'll start to open that up. Well, we're not going to become a new research company, but we do have a view on that one small thing.
Okay, let's start from new phase. First question, ready?
Yes, go for it, yeah.
Okay, we all know that cloud is important and IoT is growing and all that stuff. But what are the actual most important services to enable the growth, or what are driving the growth? I mean, they are growing, but why?
Okay. So is that why the cloud is growing, yeah?
Yeah, what is driven by, where it comes?
Okay, sure. Well, I think really, we've touched upon it today, but digitalization and data is really driving the adoption of the cloud, and also the ability to analyze that data in a much more efficient and effective manner. I think, IoT is a perfect example of, masses of data that's being collected and then being analyzed in real time to actually significantly change everyday services and actions. And a great example of that, where we worked with a partner, Schneider, and we developed IoT for farmers. So farming, you think, is a really old school industry, right? But they're actually really adopting a lot of this technology. And in New Zealand, they have these huge arms that are sprinklers, so they can water the fields. And before this solution, basically, they used to just water the whole field. And that actually meant that there was a lot of wastage of water, because there'd be areas of the field that were already watered or waterlogged or maybe really dry that needed extra water. But working with us and Schneider, we developed sensors in every single sprinkler. So now that the arm goes across, it can tell in the ground instantly whether that's waterlogged or dry, and it can either water it or not. And that's made a huge saving for the farmers and also for one of our most precious resources, which is water. So, yeah.
Thank you. Carla?
Yeah, what we are seeing in terms of workloads that are moving to the cloud is once, of course, the cloud native applications that are being developed in the cloud and that haven't existed before. But then if we look at the more traditional workloads, then we see that a lot of data is moving to the cloud because of business continuity requirements or backup requirements. So many organizations, especially smaller enterprises, are looking to the cloud for their secondary data center to create this business continuity strategies that they couldn't implement before. We also see that a lot of IT service functions are moving to the cloud, so IT help desk is moving to the cloud. But then if you go up the stack, we see software development, of course, is very suitable to the cloud, especially to develop these new mobile apps and cloud-native apps, but also to do more traditional software development in the cloud and to test these environments. So that's where we see a big stream of workloads. And then, of course, analytics as well, especially for new applications like Internet of Things, where you collect a lot of data from the edge, you bring it back to the data center, or you might not want to bring it back to the data center, but you want to analyze it right in the cloud, and it will never touch your data center. So we see new architectures evolving there as well. And then, as I said earlier, in the software as a service space, we see a lot of applications like customer relationship management, human resource management, so areas where organizations have typically underinvested. They are now, when they want to modernize these areas for their organizations, they actually go straight to the cloud.
Yeah, I think I'd certainly echo that. I mean, my background, digital media and telco, and it's always a good example how once the proliferation of devices, end-user devices, tablets, smartphones, etc., started to grow, the need to deliver video files of the movie, of the TV program in different formats, shapes and sizes also started to grow. So encoding, which is the service that did that, used to be a box, almost, a little box that would fit into a rack in someone's own operations center. Once the ability for that to be virtualized was available via the new sort of cloud-based technologies, then people started to virtualize it. Once you do virtualization, means you can rent it rather than sell it, and you open up a different revenue stream, a different way in which you start to deliver those services. And that's happening everywhere. I mean, there are people thinking, why are we doing this big box thing anymore? Why don't we sort of do a cloud-based service? And I guess, sometimes you do need big boxes, don't get me wrong, but most of the time you can also have a cloud-based service. So the world has gone to that view that, listen, we need to think about cloud as a delivery mechanism for our own products, as well as we need to consume cloud to deliver, HR services or selling services, etc. So it's a sort of combination of that sort of growth and that digitalization that we're seeing.
Okay. We were talking about interconnection, which is kind of pretty core message of Equinix. But why it is important for these guys here? I mean, why it's important? I mean, interconnection, it's clear. We want to connect people in our ecosystem in our data center. That's pretty clear. We get more customers, more interconnection. But why? Why do you think we need that? And what do you think about our interconnection and how important that would be? So, Rory.
Well, I think our interconnection is brilliant. I would say that, wouldn't I? I think in general, I mean, the reason we're offering the services that I've talked about today, and Cloud Exchange being a great example of that, is again, it's a necessity of business to be successful in the digital age. The way in which you used to connect, over the internet has its limitations. The internet is peaky, it's not so secure. You can't guarantee services. If you have an SLA to deliver a digital service to your customer and you can't meet that, then you're going to be hit. The bottom line is going to be affected. So the private interconnection has grown and grown, not just with Equinix, with other companies as well, because it's a safer, more secure way in which you can deliver those services. Once you have the safety and security, it means you can look at the performance levels. And again, private interconnection offers you a much better performance because it is point to point, it is secure. So back to the kind of the laws of physics that we, sort of talked a little bit about in the presentation. You do need to connect from point to point and point to multi-point in many occasions. So for us, interconnections, we recognize that in digital business. We recognize that the world has changed, that companies need to have and get access to other services. And that's why we can offer that choice of services, whether it's through an internet exchange, through cloud exchange, through our direct connects, or what have you. We can offer you a way in which you need to get to your people, your customers, the services that you consume, the services that you want to sell much more quickly and efficiently. So hopefully we're doing the right thing, and certainly with the launch of Cloud Exchange, that should help here.
Okay, Carla, you are coming kind of research world. Mm-hmm. Do you agree or not?
No, I do agree. And what we find is that when you think about digital transformation, one of the key goals of digitally transforming your organization is to provide a better customer service and a better customer experience across all the channels, from physical to virtual. And that's and one of the key tenets of high customer service is that it's a secure and trusted service. Because otherwise your customers wouldn't want to use it, and also that it's high performance. And we know that all from our own experience as mobile users is we don't want to wait for a website to build or for an application to respond. We want immediate feedback from this application. Otherwise we go somewhere else because there's a lot of choice. So I think interconnection is a key part of providing this customer experience that is really the goal of digital transformation.
Okay, so Richard, kind of point of well-known large hyperscaler.
Well, I think there's no point in having an amazing cloud if you can't get to it in a performant manner, right? It's kind of illogical. So connectivity to me is absolutely fundamental, and I think one of the things that a solution like Equinix is offering is the fact that it's and speed to connectivity, which is absolutely key now. People want to have that kind of cloud on-demand style experience with all of their services, and I think we see it as consumers today, and I think that's where Equinix is going. And that's a very something we're very happy with in terms of providing those connections in good time.
Okay. Then we've all kind of hear about networking, connectivity, all that stuff. But what about the actual data? I mean, how important the data is? There's a lot of data in the internet. It's growing and growing and growing. What's your take on it? I mean, connectivity is important. How important is data? What issues, what you think around, and how do you think we should kind of face the reality that data is growing, we can't really handle it all? Mm-hmm. Sorry, that's kind of pretty large question, but maybe we start with Richard, so sure. Make it best.
Well, like I said, I mean, having a great cloud without connectivity is pretty redundant, but having a great cloud without data is even more redundant, right? Because data is the thing that you compute and you analyze and you store. And I think the big change is probably, 5-10 years ago, we probably still had nowhere near as much data, but we still had a lot of data, but we were limited by the compute and the analysis tools that we had to actually mine that data. And now that, with the power of the cloud and hyperscale and all that good stuff, you can actually now look at that data and really mine it and get the value out of it. And I think we're only at the cusp of this in actually what we will be able to do with this data moving forward. I mean, we work with a lot of car manufacturers and with driverless cars, and these guys are, they're spinning up huge amounts of data every second from all those sensors. And now having the ability to then migrate that data to the cloud, analyze it, and then come back with a solution on how to make a driverless car better is just, to me, amazing. And I think it's something that, without the cloud and without, the connectivity to the cloud and all the other services that have evolved now, we wouldn't even be able to be talking about this today. So, yeah, absolutely crucial.
And I think, but the big change that I've been seeing is that in the past we always created most of the data in the data center from the enterprise applications that we're running. But now actually most of the data is created on the edge, like you said, with driverless cars, with sensors in machines, with all our devices that we are wearing. And how do you deal with the fact that the data actually doesn't originate in the data center, but it originates somewhere out there, right? And then where do you analyze it? Do you analyze it on the edge, or do you bring it back to the data center or to a cloud? And what data do you want to bring back? Do you really need all the data, or can you do some quick analysis on the edge and then discard the data, just keep the results? So there are a lot of choices or decisions that organizations need to make in order to get to the value, because I think just having a lot of data doesn't bring any value by itself, but you have to be really selective about what you can do with the data. I think that will change in the future when we have better analytics tools and we can compute larger and larger amounts in real time. Then we can probably at some point take advantage of all the data. But I think right now organizations are still limited by the fact that they need to choose which data they want to analyze because they can't keep all the data. And maybe it's just passing through the organization. So I think these are actually very difficult decisions for enterprises to make around data.
Okay, Rory?
Yeah, there's no doubt data is important. I think The Economist magazine was recently quoted as saying that data is the new oil. So I'm not sure if we're going to change terabits to barrels, but we can have a different metric. And there's a lot of similarity with the way the oil business and how oil is important in terms of its liquidity, but also the way in which companies will use that to monetize their new services or improve their services. So companies that work with us, we see them doing different things. I mentioned GE Predix as a new sort of IoT platform, but they're doing the same sort of thing as our New Zealand farmers, in that they've got these big machines, these big Caterpillar trucks out there doing what they do. They're all driverless. They're huge things. They're a significant amount of money to purchase. And they're analysing via a whole heap of sensors around that machine as it goes up and down the mountain to dig minerals or what have you. How well it's performing, but they need to get their data back, and then they need to do something with it, and they need to analyse it, and then they need to make business decisions based on that analysis. So if that analysis says you've got 4 more hours before that wheel falls off, then you want to stop that happening, because obviously the cost of repairing it in a bad state is nothing like doing maintenance in a good state. So that's an easy example to make. But I think in all of the industries, I guess, you represent, you'll have similar data coming in, and you have to ask yourself, well, are we doing the most with that? Are we mining that data as well we can? So it may or may not be the new oil, but it's certainly very, very significant.
Okay, you two at least mentioned driverless cars, but what do you think? What is the most important emerging technology which is coming? Just pick one. Don't say they all are important. Speak. What is the most important, from your opinion, to kind of watch for, and what will kind of, most of the people here are interested about a business which is kind of biggest business in the future. What would you be your pick if you would pick business now? Will be best business after 5 years or 10?
Well, definitely for Microsoft, it's one of our big plays is around artificial intelligence. I think we're seeing a huge amount of growth in there, and I think there's a view of artificial intelligence like from the dystopian future where we're all going to lose our jobs and robots are going to take over the world. But I think actually when you look into it, it's more around how can we use computers to do processing better, to actually do compute functions better and learn from those things. And I think, actually, it's opening up this whole new world. And I think, if we look at things like, Cortana or Alexa or all these new AI tools, I think, that's just very much the tip of the iceberg. I think it will become more and more commonplace for us to talk and ask for things. Keyboards will go away and we will be just talking and commanding. And I think that's one of the big things. And I think what this actually also brings to the table is how do we start to interact with this new type of medium. And there was a really interesting article I read around Burger King. So they actually ran an ad on radio and on TV, and it was a guy challenging another guy to name all the ingredients in a Whopper burger. And he actually said, okay, guys, I don't know. Google, okay, Google, tell me what it is. And then everyone who was watching that ad on TV at home who had a Google device, it actually started talking to them and telling them what the ingredients of the Whopper was. So they actually managed to hack basically the system and and it's a really impactful way of advertising and almost taking advantage of this new medium, which I think is amazing. Google very quickly managed a way to stop them doing that, but they were one of the first and were quite revolutionary in that sort of ad campaign that we called guerrilla marketing. So it's another way of the changing medium of advertising and digitalization and how we're actually all adapting to this amazing world of AI. So.
Yeah, I would actually agree that that artificial intelligence is probably the one that will create a lot of value for organizations. But what I'm also seeing is from early adopters of artificial intelligence is that it requires a lot of organizational change as well. Because one of my customers said that they ran artificial intelligence on their sales cycle for the last year to find out why their sales had been going down in one particular segment. And the AI, they started with 500,000 hypotheses that they want to test, and they narrowed it down to 50 that were very probable, where the whole management team agreed that these are the 50 things that they would need to change in order to be successful. But then they found out that they just couldn't start 50 initiatives at once, right? Because that's not how they work. They make a one-year plan, and this was kind of out of cycle, and they just couldn't change the organization to actually react on the results they had from AI. So it's not just about technology implementation, but it's also about organizational change on being geared to take the results that you get from artificial intelligence and implement them. But I would say that the biggest value is really coming from artificial intelligence solutions and make them work. But then there are also some technical building blocks that I find very interesting, and one of them is blockchain, that I think will have a huge impact on how we conduct business, because suddenly you have this immutable ledger to record all the transactions, and I think that is going to transform supply chains in every industry and have actually a massive impact. So that's another one. I can't limit myself to one.
Okay, Rory?
Yeah, well, I kind of would agree with the panel, and actually it probably is the combination of AI and blockchain and those kind of technologies that will really revolutionize, and people will come up with ideas we can't even think of now. But I mean, I like Richard's example of Burger King, because from a marketing point of view, there is a theory that we need to think about how we market to machines now, because obviously if we can market to the Alexas, the Cortanas of this world, it means that when you say, Cortana, I want to buy a takeaway meal, where should I go? You can start to help influence the results. So you have to be aware that your device isn't always neutral. It will react to the data that's in the search engine that it chooses to actually investigate. And it's a very interesting market, because a lot of these devices, the Echo Dot, I guess, is perhaps the most famous, but the speaker devices, which are about artificial intelligence, often they have to use other services to rely on. So, Amazon's Echo Dot will probably use Google's search engine to give you a device, or it will use a service from Spotify to play the music that you want to play. So it's a very interesting market at the moment, where they're all sort of reliant on each other, or the big sort of technologies are reliant on each other to work together well. So I think over time you'll see a lot of change in the industry about who will be most dominant, who will win that sort of speaker war. And by the time they win the speaker war, the speaker will be redundant, it'll be something else. It's a bit like Tesla cars. Apparently there's no button there to start the car, there's no key. Oh, that's gone, there's no button to start the car. Not that I have one, but I was told there's no button, you just get in and you drive. And I think it's like losing the keyboard. We'll start to do things in a very different way. So very exciting, and lots of services to come, which will baffle us, I'm sure, but be great fun.
Okay, I actually have one extra question, because you all agree that AI is probably most important. So should we be scared? I mean, most of the people have probably seen the Terminator, the Skynet, and all that stuff.
I think we shouldn't be scared. I think it's just about embracing it in the right way. And I think if you look at the way humans have evolved, we've been through many industrial revolutions, and we're still here, and we're still succeeding and thriving. And I think we've got to embrace it with the right frame and mindset. And I think I wouldn't be scared. I'd embrace it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think that we will be able to create much more value for society and overall, and create a better future for us by using AI.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, it's not going away either. So I think we have to embrace the technology, make sure that it's particularly well handled and thought through and delivered in a responsible social way. But it's really exciting. I think it's just an exciting way in which we can start to do things that we never could, and bring it on.
Okay, audience, any questions? Everyone eager to go to coffee?
Yeah.
So, okay. If there's no questions, no one, then I think we can head to the coffee. So thank you for the panel. Thank you for your audience. And feel free to ask if